Thank you so much, sir, for delivering your insightful vision about this indispensable issue. Thank you so much. Progressing forward, I would request Dr. Arun Vishwanathan, sir, for his address on the topic technology and national security, emerging challenges. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. At the outset, let me thank the Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Sandeep Kumar Sharma ji. Thank you, sir, for chairing the session and also catalyzing this important national webinar on India's national security challenges in the contemporary times and bringing together so many extraordinary speakers. It is indeed an honor and great privilege to have the opportunity to listen and share the platform with some of the country's top experts and thinkers on national security. I have had the good fortune to work under the guidance of Dr. Arvind Gupta when he was the Lal Bahadur Shastri Chair in IDSA. And I have always learned a lot from him, and today was no different. Especially, I am amazed at his ability to switch between the macro and the micro pictures seamlessly. So, that is always something that I have learned a lot, and I am sure all the students and other participants would have benefited from him. Also, Sri Shakti Sinha ji and Sri Seshadri Chari ji, when they had visited my university, the Central University of Gujarat, one learned a lot from them, and today was no different. And indeed, it is my privilege and pleasure to share the stage with Professor Arvind Kumar, my senior colleague. And today, I have again learned a lot from his lecture. Thank you so much, sir. uh, I would be flagging three important issues which are related to technology and national security. The first issue which I would like to speak on, which Dr. Arvind Gupta also spoke of, was the requirement of arms, weapons, or weapon systems for the Indian Defence Forces. And we know that over the past few years, India has become the world's largest importer with around 60% of our defense equipment being procured from abroad. As per the CIPRI data, between 2015 to 2020, we were the second largest buyer of foreign weaponry after Saudi Arabia, accounting for about 9.2% of global arms imports. Uh, Apart from this fact, it is also important to remember that apart from the direct imports or capital acquisitions, as we know, it equally vast amount of money is spent every year on the purchase of component consumables from foreign sources by the military and various state-owned enterprises, the DPSUs, like the Hindustan Aeronautic Limited, BEL, and others. According to the Indian Defence Minister, Sri Rajnath Singh, between 2015 and 2020, 260 deals worth 3.5 lakh crores, that's about 47 billion dollars, US dollars, have been signed for the armed forces. Now, it is quite apparent that this current situation is fraught with obvious risks. One is that it is a drain on the financial and foreign exchange reserves, but on the other hand, it also puts it as a situation of vulnerability. As in an interview, former Chief of Army Staff General VP Malik had stated that the dependence on foreign partners for critical defense equipment and spares had resulted in the serious crisis during the 1999 Kargil conflict. And he famously stated, "We will fight with what we have," during the Kargil conflict. Uh, and at that conflict also we were running short of a lot of spares for critical buffers, artillery guns, naval helicopters, and which had hampered the optimum utilization of these platforms. And if you go back in history, following the 1998 nuclear test, which Sri Shakti Sinha had referred to, India had suffered sanctions, and many countries had refused selling such much needed equipment and spares. Kargil obviously is not the first instance of such denial. It happened during the 1965 Indo-Pak War, where US and UK had stopped supply of all military equipment to India and Pakistan. Earlier, during the 1971 war, also the American administration under President Nixon was completely tilted in favor of Pakistan. And in addition to the diplomatic support that they had extended to Islamabad, US had directly or indirectly supplied Pakistan with much needed military equipment. And despite the embargo on the military supplies to Pakistan imposed by the US Congress, the Nixon administration supplied Pakistan with F-5 and F-104 fighter aircraft via Iran and Jordan, their allies at that point in time. Recent declassified documents, American declassified documents, bring out the fact that American Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, in a meeting with the then Chinese ambassador, acquiesced to China providing Pakistan with military supplies at a meeting in Paris. So this brings us to the point that we realize that in the past there have been certain instances where we have been vulnerable because of our over reliance on imports for defense supply. And the current government led by Sri Narendra Modi has made several efforts to change this. The Make in India policy was a big boost to effort to change this situation. And in his recent address to the nation on May 12, 2020, he had given a clarion call for Atmanirbhar Bharat, which my earlier speakers have also referred to, based on a self-reliant and a confident India based on 5 pillars: the economy, infrastructure, system, demography, and demand. And taking a cue from there, that equation by the Prime Minister, the Department of Military Affairs under the Ministry of Defense had prepared a list of 101 items which range from surface-to-air missiles to several ammunition to assault rifles and many things, where a staggered embargo would be imposed on import of certain these prescribed items. About 101 items are being on the list. It is available on the Ministry of Defense website. So there is a push from the government to ensure that we move towards greater self-reliance in terms of defense, first of all, and the defense industry in the country over a period of time is able to build up the capacity and the capability to supply and meet the requirement of our defense forces. So that is the first issue I wanted to flag. The second issue, which especially which has come to the forthright due to the pandemic crisis, is the dependence or the control by China of many critical materials and equipment, and China's control of the global supply chain, which Dr. Arvind Gupta also spoke about. Now, for the benefit of some of the students here, I would like to just explain what global supply chain is. It is in a globalized world, production is not centralized. It is largely decentralized, and there is a supply chain is a global interlinked trading network where raw materials, semi-finished goods, components, finished goods are produced at various areas and sort of brought together. So a pandemic like situation or wars or any such conflict can cause supply disruptions of this entire global supply chain, and this has happened. Now, as a result of its efforts, what China has been able to do is that it has become a global manufacturing hub as from the late 1970s since it opened up. And it has reached a position today where from 1988, where it contributed to about 2% of the world's manufacturing, it has reached a position where it produces about 25% of the world's manufacturing, sort of, fact, the world's manufacturing hub today. Now, this is might be a matter of concern as we have seen today. Now, largely what countries have seen is if factories in China are able to produce things in cheaper, large numbers, it makes pure economic sense for us to buy them from China and use it for our own economic benefits because it is available cheap there. But what happens when these materials and technologies are also controlled by China and we are dependent on them is what I would like to speak about. And I would like to highlight the example of two such materials. One is the rare earth elements. Now, rare earth elements are important, very, very important as we know. One is because of their dual nature of use. They are used in military domain as well as in civilian domain. Each of our mobile phones which we have, smartphones that we have rare earths in them, many different kinds of rare earths. Flat screen LCD monitors and TVs have rare earths. Missiles have rare earth elements in them. Our electric vehicles that we are moving towards to pursue a green sort of vehicles, permanent magnets have rare earths in them. So rare earths are becoming very, very important. And there also we have seen over time China become very, very dominant in terms of both the entire dominance of the entire ecosystem of rare earth, right from milling to mining to production to the end sort of product. In 1980, and I would like to just highlight this with a few facts. In 1980, China produced the world demand for rare earth was 30,000 tons. By 2010, this was 1,20,000 tons. 2019, it had almost doubled to 2,10,000 tons. Now, if you look at the figures of China, in 1993, China controlled about 38% of global production of the entire rare earth ecosystem. 2008, it had increased to 90%. 2011, it had again increased and almost dominant to 97% of the world production on rare earth. So they completely dominated this. Now, many countries, I am not saying have not realized it. Japan, Taiwan, India included, United States are making steps to change this situation. They have realized that their economies, their factories, their defense sector are at greatly vulnerable because of this, and they need to address this situation. But it is something that the Chinese have very strategically done and moved towards over a period of time. And the important point, again, I would like to highlight is that instead of just producing the minerals, mining and milling, China controls the entire rare earth ecosystem from milling and mining to the finished products. Now, the third and the area that I would like to talk about is about the active pharmaceutical ingredients. In this pandemic crisis, we have seen medicines, vaccines, there's a lot of talk about that. But all medicines are made up of certain API, certain active pharmaceutical ingredients. Now, here again, China has become very, very dominant. Now, why is that very important for India? If we are looking at the Indian context, why is it important for India? Because it directly has an impact on our health security, availability of medicine and affordability of the medicine. Both of them are important for the human security, health security of our population. And economically also, sort of this puts our pharmaceutical sector at risk because India's pharmaceutical sector is third in the world by volume and 14th in the world by value. So it's a very important component of our economic strength. Now, what has changed is something I would like to highlight a few lines about history. That about 25 years ago, India was producing and was dominant in the API, producing of API for the pharmaceutical goods. Now, in pursuit of cheaper ingredients and cheaper sort of production, we moved, like many other countries, like the United States and others, we sourced it, outsourced it to China because they were able to produce it at the cheaper cost and they were able to supply it in larger quantity. Also, as the patents of generic drugs began to expire, China began to take these drugs and produce them in larger quantities. So both these things happened at the same time. From about 25% or largely being self-reliant, India produces only about 10% of its API requirement as of recently domestically. And so this L1 or pursuit of this low cost has to change. And this is not only for us, this is for the entire world community is realizing that in pursuit of this low cost manufacturing, you are missing the larger strategic implications of pursuing this cause, especially with a country or like China. In APIs, again, some facts. API worth in 2018-19, 16,900 crore worth of APIs were imported from China. That is about 67% of our requirement. In 1920, this has gone up to 24,900, almost 25,000 crores. Now, the government again has realized that this is a major area of vulnerability which needs redressal, and we have sort of identified the health ministry, the Ministry of Commerce has begun to act on this. What they have done is they have identified some of the critical APIs which are used in lot of drugs, and those are being targeted first. Many states like Gujarat, Karnataka, and others have given sort of extended sort of lot of shops, lot of free land for companies which want to set up API manufacturing facilities in the states. 7,000 crores product link incentive scheme has been announced by the government. About 53 incentives have been announced to various domestic producers if they want to invest in the production of this pharmaceutical ingredient. So this pandemic has done one thing, is that it has brought us that several of these micro issues also become major points of vulnerabilities, especially in this kind of a black swan kind of an event. Let me sort of take a pause and stop here, because most of the speakers before have spoken about the larger, broader issues. So I thought I could contribute to the debate by speaking on some of these three micro issues. And again, let me thank the organizers, the Department of Gandhian and Peace Studies, Dr. Aslam Khan, for this opportunity. And I will stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your noteworthy words and sharing your stance on the topic. Thank you so much. Aslam sir, can we open the session for questions?
Of course,